Stacy and the Macro team for having us, and a special thank you to our sponsors of today's event, Women's Foundation of California, the Culture Change Fund, and Kat Taylor. Hello, everyone. On behalf of the entire team here at the Big we are so excited to introduce you to who we are today. My name is Tanum Davis Bohen. I am the Chief Strategy and Operations Officer, and it is my pleasure to officially introduce you to the Big We. For those of you who are not familiar with who we are, the Big We is the manifestation of our founder, Anasa Troutman's lifelong vision to create a world where people are inspired to reimagine and build a world where creativity, joy, and abundance is readily accessible to everyone. The Big We believes that stories are powerful ways to shape perspective and experience the world. We believe in abundance and space for us all. We also believe that if given the proper resources and access, we can heal and transform our own communities. Our North Star at the Big We is to expand the social imagination, to tell the stories that we need to hear, shift the narrative of what's possible for our communities, and move resources so that those possibilities are a reality. To that end, the Big We ecosystem consists of Big We Media, which develops and produces content that tells the stories of the global majority so that we can see and experience our full humanity. Big We Foundation, which builds community around the stories of everyday people, especially BIPOC women and girls. And last, Big We Capital, which invests in projects on screen and on the ground that are inspired by our shared vision of healing and restoration. The Big We partners with BIPOC, women, and queer creatives who have important stories to tell, collaborators who want to expend the life of their content and create a lasting impact in the world, and donors and investors who are committed to leveraging their capital for a just and equitable world. Okay, I'm very excited about our conversation today, Uninterrupted. Together, let's reimagine a world where the stories of Black, Indigenous, Latinx, AAPI, and women are fully supported, celebrated, and beloved. Think about it. What if the stories of our communities were visible at full scale? How would the world change if we uniformly cultivated access to investment and infrastructure that allows us to own our stories, our ideas, and our future? What if we were never interrupted for all of those years to manifest our fullest potential? What if we loved Black and Brown people as much as we loved Black and Brown culture? In a moment, Anasa will be joined by Janabar Bay, founder and CEO of J Bay Entertainment, Effie Brown, CEO of Game Changer Films, and Bryce Cracknell, manager and impact producer of Social Impact at Participant. And a little later, Anasa will be joined by Emil Nava, prolific writer, director, and founder of Amalite, as they share exciting news about a Big We Amalite partnership that will put the power of the green light in the hands of BIPOC, women, young, and queer creatives. It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce the founder and CEO of the Big We, Anasa Troutman.
Tanum, thank you so much. It was so exciting listening to you talk about this today. I just got excited all over again. So thank you so much for all your work. Hi everybody. My name is Anasa Troutman. I am the founder and CEO of the Big We. And I want to take a minute to thank Macro and the Sundance team with a super, super special green hearted shout out to Stacy Walker King because Stacy has been very supportive of the Big We, both on and on this stage. It's our third time on the Macro stage, and every time we discover something new about this work. And so we're grateful to be here today and excited about this conversation. Also, sincere thanks to our sponsors, the Women's Foundation of California, our wonderful friend Bia over at the Culture Change Fund, and of course, Kat Taylor, who is on a learning journey with us here in this work too. I've spent most of my life and all of my career thinking about stories and how the stories we tell change what's possible in our own lives and the lives of others. We created the Big We so that we can create community to be in this work and with these stories with everybody else. When I was young, I believed that if you wanted to change the world, you had to create an organization. But now I know that if you want to change the world, you really need to create community. The Big We is our community, lovingly called the Weavers. And the Big We team has worked very hard over the last 3 years, sifting through and weaving together a set of ideas, practices, and stories that we're really excited to share with you. Today, though, we have the absolute privilege of being in community with some folks who are leading in the conversation about our future and how our stories create portals to quantum leap transformations for ourselves, for the communities that we belong to, and the communities that we care about. With us today, Jana, Effie, and Bryce. We're really excited to talk to them, but we're also excited to have you jump in. Can't hear you here, but we want you to join us on Twitter as we live tweet at the Big We using the hashtag what if. Jana, FB, Bryce, welcome.
Hey,
Hey
hey,
y'all.
hi Bryce, hi Effie.
Hey,
I
hey,
know,
good
I
people.
know. You already know, right? We all in here together. That's right. Say hello. Thank y'all for coming. Y'all really are were the top three people on my list. I didn't want to have this conversation with anybody else. So thank you for being here. I want to take a minute first just to give y'all a chance to introduce yourselves. Y'all all do so many different things, but tell us a little bit about you and what you do that you want to share with us today. We'll start with you, Jana.
Well, good morning again. Love that Effie, the
I
energy is
know.
so beautiful. So I'm Jana Babatunde Bay. I am a multi hyphenate. I like to say legacy builder, CEO, uh, mother, daughter, professional, social impact influencer. I am the owner of J Bay Entertainment, formerly the CEO of the Will and Jada Smith Family Foundation, upon which I now serve on the board. And I always say my stomping grounds were Inglewood, California, where I also came up through the rank and file of Overbrook Entertainment for about 30 years. So I could go on and talk about all the many things that I've been blessed to have the opportunity to do, but first and foremost, to be able to have the platform to tell stories and to do so through the lens of inspiration and social good is the number one on my list. So that's me.
Thanks, Jana. Effie, tell us about yourself.
Very excited. Hey, everybody. It's so good to see your faces. As you can tell, I've been in quarantine for quite some time, so I just love seeing other people. I'm here by myself in this house. But who am I? Okay, got it. Besides being lonely, my name is Effie, and I'm a film producer and the CEO of Game Changer Films. And Game Changer is a company that produces, finances, and develops work for women, people of color, LGBTQ plus IA, as well as people with disability. And so I'm not, but like I talk a lot. So I'm sure I'll be able to sort of pipe in a little bit more when there's questions and things of that nature. But I'm a independent film producer and sitting here by myself in my house in Echo Park.
Thanks, Effie. I'm in my house by myself too.
I know, right? This is what it looks like. I'm just looking outside. I'm like,
Bryce, come and tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's wonderful to be in conversation with y'all. Laura, Anasa, Tanum, Stacy, thank you for having me. My name is Bryce Cracknell. I am a impact producer at Participant. I'm also a storyteller and writer from North Carolina, and I'm just excited to dive into the conversation today.
Awesome. So I want to start about this idea of uninterrupted. We've been calling this panel uninterrupted, really talking about like what does that even look like, right? What are we doing here? Because I know each of you to be someone who, maybe not in those terms, but thinks about that conversation. Is it part of what drives you and your storytelling and the way you move in the world? So I would love to start by hearing kind of like what world are you working to manifest? Why are you even doing this? What visions are driving you when you think about all the reasons that propel you to tell stories? Like when you talk to Janet about social good and you talk Effie about all the communities that you are working to tell their stories, what is this vision that's driving us? What are we here doing together? Anyone jump in. I see you excited to jump through this camera. You go. You go
Oh no,
ahead.
I'm like this. I'm like, where are we going? Where are we going?
Let's go.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, it's so funny, and I'm a little, I'm an oversharer. Go figure.
I love it. I love it.
I've been in the streets for a long time. I just turned 50, and I've always have been in this sort of flow. I remember my first job, as being, but I'm a cheerleader. Like these are the stories. Like I got my, I was deeply, deeply affected by not seeing people like me stories that reflected my community, and also false narratives being shown in television and film. And that's what really drove me. And I was very, very grateful that I've been able to, sort of make some strides from doing films like Real Women Have Curves to Dear White People to working on the projects that I am now. But real talk, and I'm really excited, to hear what everyone else has to say. But it's time for a new type of hero, and it's time for us to start owning our content instead of it being licensed out and having other people make money off of our stories, because our stories right now are in. And I feel really strongly about that, which is one of the reasons why when I was offered the opportunity to take over Game Changer Films, I jumped at it, because being able to put money behind projects that you're passionate about is really, it's a game changer. Dun-dun-dun. But that's true. Being able to greenlight your own movies, and also to have artists be able, and this is not just proselytizing about the company that I'm a part of right now, because I think we all have that, but being able to have artists and filmmakers and people come to you and not having to do that extra explanation of like, okay, as a Black person, okay, as a queer person, okay, as a woman, you know what I mean? Being able to, like, our company is representing all of those communities so that you're able to get to the story and tell your truth, and not feeling like you have to justify or explain. Like that's what really motivates me and really makes me feel passionately about what I'm doing. I don't know if I answered the question, but that's the thing that gets me going. And that's where, I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. I'm hoping that like we make some big strides and I can pass the buck on off, It's all about legacy as well.
I know you can't see me, but I'm over here like my head
see myself
nodding so much. I'm like, you are over here. I want to put a pin in the conversation about ownership and sovereignty, because that is a big theme for me right now. But I want to create space for you and Janet and Bryce to jump in on that question. But we're going to get back to this conversation about ownership for sure.
You know what? I want to answer your question, Anasa. but
Hey, Jenna, you can do whatever you want around me. So
all right, well, I'll accept that and receive it. Don't be mad at me when I do it, but
never.
I want to piggyback on the point of legacy. I mean, you threw it in at the end, but I actually think that's, if you're talking about uninterrupted and how did we get here and why are we here? And Anasa, I was thinking about the question of or the statement of uninterrupted. What does that actually mean? What does that signify? To be uninterrupted, you have to have begun something. You have to have already started something and then been interrupted in the process to not be so. And I feel like, for a lot of us, the stories that we wanted to tell, or the place that we wanted to show up, our presence, was either invisible, we were invisible, or not present at all, or unheard. And I think we're at this interesting moment in time where we are more visible, and we do have the opportunity to share more of our story, and we do have the benefit of a rich legacy to draw from and to think about moving into the future. But the question remains, well, how do we do that in a way that, to my earlier point, does promote a social good, that allows us to take advantage of our diverse experiences and to display them and share them in such a way that it invites that community and invites people in, and allows us to be more open and quite frankly, to be more present. And there's a lot of touch points we can, I hope, in this conversation go to when you're talking about agency and you're talking about ownership and, the social, political, financial, economics, issues that we have to address. But I think when we begin with the mindset of legacy, what are we here to do? What are we really trying to create? Why are we using our voice? How are we using our voice? And how are we reaching back to be our brother's keeper, our sister's keeper, or to be a keeper? That's the important part. And so for me, I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question, but I feel like somewhere in there was an answer to your question. But that word legacy, we need to keep that in the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely did. And I was just talking about that yesterday. We have some folks I work with. We talk a lot about 100-year arc. It's like, what are we actually doing? Not just tomorrow, but like in 100 years. And I set my 100-year clock to begin in 1968 for a whole bunch of reasons we can't get into right now. So we're like 53 years into the arc, and I'm really, really, really thinking about the next 47 years and how I'm going to do my part to think about, completing that arc. So I'm all the way with you there, talking about legacy. Bryce, jump in here. Talk to us about what brings you here. What is driving you?
Yeah. No, I love the conversation, particularly as we think about legacy and what it means to be uninterrupted. I also think about interrupting and the power that comes with interrupting, and depending on who sort of holds that power, what it means. And I think for many of us, we're sort of reclaiming the power of disruption and what we can do as storytellers to tell radical truths that are able to disrupt narratives that are dominant and false and untrue, and sort of tell each other myths that are no longer things that we need to share with one another, but instead need to sort of radically change and move in a different direction. We see this in social movements on the ground and grassroots movements and in young people, but also in the people that whose shoulders we stand on, who have had to interrupt these sort of dominant narratives at many points over the course of history for us to even get to this place where we are now. And so I think what's exciting is that in the sort of storytelling that we're engaging in, how can we continue to disrupt and interrupt those narratives and really bring back that storytelling to the communities in which they're from, the marginalized spaces where universal truths are just sort of most evident, where all of our solutions lie. I truly believe our solutions exist in the most marginalized spaces. And so that's what I think about a lot. And I'm excited to see more storytelling in that direction.
I'm happy that you brought that up, Bryce, and you just the uninterrupted narrative, right? What are we interrupting? And part of the thing that I struggle with is really about how much do I allow myself just to say what it is that I feel free to say, and how much do I feel like I actually need to intervene in a narrative that needs to be disrupted. And like, I would love to hear y'all talk about kind of that balance, because it feels lightweight oppressive to have to be like, oh, here I go. Now I got to interrupt this narrative now. Like, well, I just want to say what I got to say. So I would love for y'all to chime in on that kind of that tension and between, what it means to be free and what it means to work to be free. Because those are two different things. Go on, Effie, I see you.
I know. I don't want to go to a close-up. I just want to be able to talk to you guys. But
yeah.
This is something that's sort of near and dear to my heart, right? Because it was very publicly televised when I had to, and God bless the ancestors and like all like in spirit, just to be like, let's cease and desist, and let's just put a pause on this and speak to people that really, it wasn't malicious. They just didn't care. And they just didn't get it. And that's the thing. And I don't know if you guys find this, that like, that's more like, whoo. I know how to do battle if like someone's against me, but like, it's interesting to be like, oh, they're not against you. They're not thinking about you. That's totally different. They are entwined and very much so of telling their own narrative as it has always been, and fostering their own stories and seeing, themselves and their narrative as a hero. And that doesn't necessarily make room for us. And when I'm saying us, I'm just sort of lumping myself in for all marginalized people. I will speak for them all. Totally kidding. I'm not, but you know what I mean. but that's the thing that and it's exhausting. And I have to tell you, and I don't know if it's any different for you cats, but like it was a bit of a backlash. It's not, and as a dark skinned Black woman of a certain age, right, who's been around, you know, um, and seeing people that who aren't maybe as melanated as as I am a white, you know what I mean? That they're able to like live their lives, talk about how they want to talk and not have any repercussions. But being a woman and a woman of color moving in this world, we have to be still cognizant of that, no matter what. Still.
I'm,
And I don't know
I'm
if anyone else has had that.
I'm happy that you brought that up, Effie, because I actually was thinking about you the other day, and I'm like, Jesus, Effie is the poster child for being interrupted, like literally on TV, in public, all over the place. Like, actually, Black lady, you can have a seat, right? And, and I am curious about how you're bringing that into your work at Game Changer Films, and do you feel from a posture standpoint, are you like in the posture of like, I'm going to say the things that are important to me, or are you in the posture like, I'm going to create a wedge in a space so that doesn't happen to other people? Like, how are you navigating
Well,
that?
oh, I love that. Thank you so much for that. I'm trying to navigate both. And that's what I
Yeah.
was trying to get at when I was first talking, and I mentioned my age. I mentioned my age a lot because I want people to know, like, I'm not brand new. It's taken a while to get here, but hopefully it won't take them as long. Like that's what that's about.
That's
So,
right.
taking over Game Changer, it really is about, I always go, and this is not being maudlin, but like on my deathbed, I will have known I have made it. If I look around and I see all of those people from the communities that I have fought for, like, they don't think about this. They're like, uninterrupted. What do you mean our stories aren't being told? Like, that's crazy. That's like having at a phone book. Like, you know what I mean? That we know how to, you know what I'm saying? But it's true. Like, they don't know what a phone book looks like. You know what I mean? Like, that's so antiquated. I can't wait. I can't wait, for that to happen. And I'm trying to create that space. But I'm also coming from, like the people in my company, I hire who I'm serving, right? Like that's also for sure. And at the end of the day, what's beauty about being a 50-year-old Black woman is I don't care so much anymore. I was going to say something else, but but I don't care anymore. I'm like, this is what it looks like. You know what I mean? Like, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I can I've taken a couple hits and a couple of, arrows and what have you. So hopefully they don't have to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's looking like, I will say, I don't know if anyone else has an opinion, but it feels like things have gotten a little bit better. I mean, right? Maybe, guys.
No, you know what? I do think we are, as I said earlier, we're at a moment in time where certain things have gotten better. That's not to say that there's been a complete shift or a complete change or that the world is upside down now and we know what it is. There are still issues that we have to deal with and grapple with or navigate on a daily basis. But there is also a mind shift. And I think particularly with young people, and particularly because of technology, where the world has become much more connected. I think, Effie, as you were saying, there is a sense of, you said, it's funny because I had a wallpaper moment. You were talking about the telephone book where I was talking to a young person and they were like, wallpaper. And I meant the wallpaper on the wall. And they thought I meant the telephone wallpaper. Anyway, my point is, technology has allowed us to be connected in a way that generationally, I'm also just about 50, where yes, okay, high five, yes, where we weren't able to do that before. And even intergenerationally, like, previously you wouldn't say how old you were. You wouldn't make a point about being, whatever your particular profile might be, it would almost be something that you had to kind of put on the back burner, ignore, whatever. But we have the opportunity to show up as our organic, truthful selves. We have this movement, it feels like, where not only are the stories desired, but that authenticity is celebrated, yearned for, and again, reaching back to that historical narrative, pulling forward the beauty of the things that we've always done, from the Negro spiritual to rap music to telling our stories in diverse ways on YouTube today. There's a rich cultural legacy that I think we're able to harness, and we're able to do it today in ways that we couldn't before, at scale and across international borders. So I think it's actually a beautiful moment, and I feel very aspirational about that. I feel like we have an opportunity, particularly with a little bit of experience behind us, to do it in a way that's much more meaningful and much more specific, than maybe we did before. Maybe then there was an opportunity for us to do previously.
Jenna, when I was listening to Effie talk a little while ago and listening to you talk now, the phrase that keeps running through my head is self-determination. And
Mhm.
I would love to hear from you just a little bit about your experience in the relationship between self-determination and these conversations that we've been having.
Mhm.
Specifically your own personal journey, like going from being such an important part of talking about legacy, right? The Will and Jada Smith legacy, and then like really thinking about your own legacy. Can you talk to us
Mhm.
about self-determination and how that's driving you in this conversation about being uninterrupted?
Yeah. Self-determination. There's so many ways to say that.
Kujichagulia.
Discipline, perseverance. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said Kujichagulia.
Oh, listen, it's oh my gosh, you sent me back to my Kwanzaa anyway. I'm not
Yep.
gonna yeah, I'm sorry, you threw me off, Anasa. Or maybe you threw me back in. And I guess that's the point. We have to pull on our heritage of fortitude and perseverance. I think, this is a crazy hard business, entertainment. But working in other aspects, when you're talking about social impact, nonprofit, it's not really any easier. When you're talking about corporate, it's not, all fluffy flowers. Corporate is ruthless. So, in every area, in every industry, there's a certain level of grit. There's a certain level of tenacity that we have to have in order to achieve. And for me, that really started out with the whole mentality of dying on the treadmill. Like you just do it till you drop, you get it or you die. I mean, you make it or break it. You know what I mean? So there really was never an opportunity or a consciousness around uh, not succeeding in whatever that endeavor might be. And it doesn't necessarily mean, big lofty things, although often that was the case, but it could be in even smaller things. But it all kind of centers around the idea of perseverance and then putting that into a practice, into a habit, into a constancy that guides your daily activities, guides your mindset, guides your goals, and tying all that together with your purpose and your passion. For me, it's all about that. Otherwise, why are we here? Early on, it might have been just, you got to make money, you have to survive, you have to put the point on the board and do something. But having the blessing of having been around the block a few times, all of that is for naught if you don't have some level of fulfillment, some guiding purpose or some guiding passion that gets you up out of the bed every day and lets you know that when you get to the final moment, you can look back and say, all right, I did that and it was something good. So
Mhm. Bryce, I want to move to you and I want to shift the conversation just a little bit because you're working on an impact strategy for a film that's showing at Sundance that I'm really interested in. I've actually been to Africatown and have some plans to do some work there. And I think this conversation about uninterrupted applied in actual community with real everyday people is something that I would love to hear from you about because you're actually kind of witnessing this shift in a bunch of folks whose story has never been told before, like about to be on the world stage. What is that looking like and how is that rolling out on the ground? How is that actually showing up in real life?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. We are, I mean, absolutely thrilled about Descendant. Prior to me moving to Los Angeles, I worked in Central Alabama on issues of wastewater and sanitation, just the most unsexy environmental justice issues that people don't want to think twice about, whether it's flushing your toilet or where does your trash go. But the things that people in these communities have often had to think about every day and have been fighting for decades and generations. In the case of Africa Town, we have an incredible filmmaker that we've worked with in the past on The Great Invisible and The Order of Myths, and her name is Margaret Brown. And she returns back to her hometown of Mobile, Alabama, to basically document part of the historical discovery of the search for the last slave ship to come to the United States. Over 50 years after international slave trade was abolished here in the US. And so, I mean, just thinking about the sort of, again, the myths and the mistruths and the sort of things that we sort of cover up, Margaret does a fantastic job of investigating that. And if you all have the opportunity to see the film at Sundance, please do so. There are also going to be other panels going a little bit more in depth on that. But for this community in particular to reclaim their story is something that we're certainly excited about and are actively sort of in discussion on. And so there's going to be a lot more to come here. And Descendant is just an extraordinary film. So yes, please check it out.
Yeah, I'm curious, Bryce, as we're talking about, at the Big we talk a lot about the story, the engagement, and the and the implementation, right? How do we embody the things that we're learning from the films? And as the person who's responsible for like really imagining what that social impact strategy looks like for a film like Descendant that literally tells the story of the last slave ship, like that's heavy. That's heavy to tell that story, and you literally are holding in your hands a conversation that could be really transformative for folks. So what does it look like for you to think about how these stories are translating into these conversations and actions on the ground?
Yeah. I mean, we think very deeply about that. What I often think about is, most importantly, how do we bring these stories back to the communities in which they're from? Oftentimes, people who work in social impact are like, well, I don't want to go back and preach to the choir. But if the choir has never had the stage to go preach themselves, then what are we doing? And so I think another example of this is a film that came out in 2020, John Lewis' Good Trouble, where we went back to the late John Lewis's hometown and home state, or not home state, but the state that he lived in for most of his life in Georgia, to help bring out and register voters there during the 2020 election, and working with those grassroots organizations in order to do so, and using the likeness and the story around John Lewis to be able to do that work. There's a reason why we chose to focus on Georgia and North Carolina and not necessarily just make it a national campaign to spread the good word of John Lewis, which we easily could have done and would have been impactful. But we knew that his story in particular and his work, essentially giving that back and creating platforms for which organizers who are already doing this work that we are privileged to be able to work with in these situations, that sort of storytelling would go that much further. And that's something that we are really thinking about doing far more frequently, and have been able to try and have just been absolutely gracious to our partners and our filmmakers for leading those efforts and sort of following in their footsteps.
I'm just sitting here reflecting, realizing that when my trip to Africa Town was the last trip that I took right before the pandemic. I got home probably a week before everything shut down. And my memory of that part of Mobile is really like the thing that really jumps out is the built environment and who owns and controls it. And thinking about this community that was built around these folks that were brought over here on the last slave ship, and the fact that how many years later the land is owned and controlled by folks who don't really care about their story and never did, right? And so that brings me back to Effie's conversation about ownership, about sovereignty, right? This conversation about self-determination, and this moment that we're in here in the 21st century where a lot of folks are talking about finance and remembering that you can't really have a conversation about race or gender or sexuality without talking about economics and finance, because for so many of us those differences meant we couldn't own land, we couldn't control our labor, we couldn't, right, all those things. And I am wondering how that's showing up in this industry. Like thinking about you, Effie, running a film company, you, Jana, launching your own firm. Like, how is this idea of sovereignty and control and finance showing up in this conversation about uninterrupted? Anyone?
I don't know who you're pointing to, but I'll take it. Like, no, you're pointing to me. Okay, copy that. Well, it takes money to make money, first of all, and we know that. But again, I do think we're at a moment where there have been successes, there have been opportunities that people have basically become sponsors in a way, where the platforms have opened up, and you've had people from Sidney Poitier, who, God rest his soul, on through someone like we were just talking about, a Will Smith, or an India Ari, or it, people who have helped open the door and have provided opportunities for people to walk through. Effie, to your point about reaching back, and with that, they are providing not only those open doors, but oftentimes opportunities, financing, platforms, a seat at the table. These things all translate to economic influence. And for people of color specifically, having more seats at the table, having more people who can say, no, hold on a minute, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it this way. Which, quite frankly, I feel like, Overbrook Entertainment was one of the leading, African-American run, his partnership with Will Smith and James Lasseter, which is now translated into, many careers that have been launched through that business platform. And Effie, you'll be able to do that with your company. I know I'm certainly intending to do that with mine. Bryce, I'm sure even with the social impact wrap around a piece of content, you're creating multiple streams of economic opportunity for people to touch the machine. I think all of it goes together. It's one big ball of opportunity if you choose to take it. And if you are able to, quite frankly, look for the positive potential. I try to stay in the positive and the aspirational, because I think when you put that good energy into things, it tends to manifest and become manifold. It tends to continue to grow. And when you have even just a few people who put a little bit of money behind that money continues to grow. And, again, for us as creators or creatives, and people who are committed to social impact and social good, every time we step into the room and we do something at whatever level of success, and hopefully huge success, we create more of that economic opportunity to be a part of that mix. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Effie, that Jana's answer made me curious about kind of your transition from full artist to, like, now you're an artist and you're.
Oh my God, I love that you called me an artist. Thank you. No, it's so funny because I came up through the ranks of film, and that, I'm gonna, and I can talk about that part, but I came up as the not so sexy part, like as a production manager, to a line producer, to a producer, to you know what I mean? So thank you for calling me an artist.
You're
They always
welcome,
call me the
darling.
nuts and bolts gal. So, so for me, so well said, like what we're talking about before. Here's a thing that became really apparent to me, and I had to make a change, and I said, I've had some real, success, right? And I'm very grateful for that, but I didn't see the needle moving, cumulatively. We've always had our Lee Daniels, Ava DuVernay, fabulous. Will and Jada, fabulous. Issa Rae, fabulous. But I'm not, I'm looking around to my left and to my right at people who were like producers, right? People who were like, I'm a writer, I'm not a star, I'm this, I'm not that, and I was like, where are we going to go? And I'll tell you where we go. We continuously went to studios and to people that didn't look like us, they weren't mean, but like they just didn't care, and they didn't know, and they didn't care to know, so it was really, and I knew, and I was like, I've been out here in these streets, and I love the fact that you're talking about being positive and having it come back and be manifold. Like, I was really, the impetus for me to make the change was I was becoming a little hopeless, and this was my last ditch effort. And that's the truth, where I was like, you know what? I'm a crafty person. Like, I'm going to go make quilts, and I'm an herbologist, and I'm going to make natural tinctures, right? For people, like, that was my like go-to, like, I'm out, you know? Um, and then and because I knew that until I was able to write a check myself, until I was able to have a group of people to say, I don't want to have to go and justify and be like, historically, why this is going to be good. There's like no movie that I've made. I mean, all my movies have made money. We've won awards. Like, I don't know what else I can do. Like, I literally, like, I don't know what else I can do. And I just want to be able to have and be able to help other people to be able to write that check and to get stuff going. And here, to be really clear, I love when people, want to be very clear. This is not me being like altruistic. This is not me being like, I'm not that chick. I'm a businesswoman. I'm an entrepreneur. And be very clear of like, our stories make money. Our stories make money. Like, American culture is Black culture. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm going in, and it's indigenous culture. Like, it's us. And then it breaks my heart when you get to see, I've been around a little bit, you get to see like how the game is played, and to be realizing of like, man, we don't get to direct those stories. You don't get to write those stories. They might put you in it, right? Because you got to be forward facing. But like, who actually makes that money? Like, how do we get that? How do we get that? Because if we were able to make the commas and zeros that those other studios and those other executive producers and producers make, then we wouldn't have to go and beg and be like, can you please, so I can buy a script or option this? We'd be like, I'm straight. Let me go buy this myself. Let me go do this myself and close that loop. That's where true power, and for me, power it's empowering, like in the mental, spiritual, and physical level. It really is to be able to do it. I don't want to say on your own, because everybody has an investor, right? You know what I mean? It's not, unless you come from money, you still can answer somebody. But when you're able to have a pool and a fund of money, it's changing. Like, for example, I just took over, and I own 51% of Game Changer, right? So, and this is a company that's been around since 2013 and has done some really wonderful work, right? But one of the things that we did, we put money into passing, right? We put money into, A Stranger with a Camera that's about to come out. That's an Irish movie, right? Female filmmaker. Just co-financed an A24 film with Elegance Bratton, who's a director and writer, called The Inspection. That was significant to be able to put a couple mil behind that, along with the studio, right? That seat at the table is very different when you do that. Trust and believe, and then being able to come, hopefully like we'll be able to continue on. And I sort of get on a soapbox with that because I feel so passionately, but like, people of color, like we are, like the marginalized, we have had to be entrepreneurs. We have had to be inventive. It's just now time for us to own it and keep it and pass it back to people that we care.
You are singing my song right now. I'm like about to get the Holy Ghost. Yes. Yes, that's all we talk about at the Big We, right? That's why we have a foundation and why we have Big We Capital, because when you walk in the room with the dollars, it's different than you walk in with an idea. It's just different. It's just different, right? What they say now, it is different. That's what the kids say. It just is different. Bryce, I'm curious how you see this conversation about finance, ownership, sovereignty, financial sovereignty in particular, translated in social impact world, like what's happening in communities, what happened in Atlanta, what's happening in Mobile and other places. Are you seeing this conversation about finance and economics reflected? Are the stories that we're telling, are owning our stories making a difference on the ground?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an inherent part of the conversation. I mean, I think so much of so much of Hollywood is just a capitalist sort of enterprise of storytelling where we need to, whether we like it or not, we need to be able to know how it works. So that way we can disrupt it. We can interrupt the way in which it works and bring more people into the fold to be co-owners. And I think the best sort of models for that are in the very places where we are doing impact work, where impact work is already happening, but it's not necessarily termed that, right? And so the extent to which we see co-op models or shared ownership in places where people are pooling resources to be able to do the things that they want to do, have sort of shared mutual funds to take care of each other in times of crises. These are models that are important, but also they need to show up in our storytelling, because inherently, when we talk about economics, we're talking about systems and structures. And when you talk about systems and structures, you're also talking about history. And so we need to have the narrative piece that's able to sort of do a lot of that work as well. And in my own sort of storytelling and writing, that's something that I'm also often trying to bring out and think about when developing characters, when developing the sort of plots and stories, and when to tell those stories, what environments are those stories being told. And so it's all sort of interconnected for sure. And for the folks that are creatives, but also wanting to learn more just about the business, the economics piece is a necessary piece of it. And then finally, we have folks like Effie who are in the room, able to open that door, make space for those stories to be told. And it's exciting. It's really exciting, but there's a lot of work to do.
Thank you for that. We are going to start to wind this down and move into the next part of our conversation. But before we leave, I want to really take a second to take a deep breath and really think about the answer to this question, because I really want to know what is the one thing that you feel like is still in the way? Like, if we could just magic wand it, like, oh, this thing right here is really what's standing in between me and Uninterrupted, or my community and Uninterrupted, my storytelling and Uninterrupted. Where are we really? Where are we really? What is in the way? I'm gonna go in the reverse order. I want to always end with you, Jana, always. So we're gonna start with Bryce and go to Effie and then come to you.
This came up a little bit, and Effie brought it up earlier, where just conversations around representation, or just diversity, equity, and inclusion for the sake of representation. I have this very I want to get beyond that so far, and so much to the point where we can talk about what that looks like behind the screen, in terms of both who's in the room, but also what are the types of stories that we're sharing and telling, and about which pieces of our experience are we sort of sharing and telling those stories. There are some incredible folks who are sort of getting beyond that work, and it really opens the door to being more authentic, I suppose, and sort of having the room for this sort of unapologetic presentation of self in the work that we do, but also in the rooms that we occupy and the space that we take up. And it gets us beyond just checking boxes and looking at percentages. Those are important, but that's not what we came here to do. We're not just here to check boxes and fill percentages. There's something beyond that. And I want us to continue to look over that hill and push beyond it, because I think that's where our liberation lies.
Right on. My least favorite word right now is optics. Gotcha.
That was really well said. Really well said. Right? Yeah. To answer the question, we're talking about what's standing in the way. Okay, be with me for a second.
I'm with you.
Be with me, because this is what I feel, and I'm coming from our perspective, is I think that we need to destroy the colonized mind. And by that meaning, and this is what I have to give a shout out to a dear friend of mine named Heather Ray, who broke it down about indigenous culture, and this is what this is. And I was like, oh my God, Black folks have been having that too. Wait a minute. She's all like, yeah, honey, it's a colonized mind. This is what this is. This is how colonizers work. And what I realized, and as strong and as fierce and a bad bitch as I think I am, there's some things that are still in my head that I just accept. And I have to be like, oh shit, wait a minute, and I have to go back in. It's so insidious. It's so insidious of being a woman of color, whatever. right? Of being like how you walk into a room, how you have to dim your light, how you can't be in a like there's like, but these are all like sort of colonizer thing, and how other like, oh, there can only be one of us, or not too many of us are gonna think that we're all against them if we're all, do you know what I mean? And that's the sort of stuff that like there's no like they like, we are doing it to ourselves now, I guess is what I'm saying. This has been so indoctrinated and so into a cellular level, like that's what I think that we have to destroy. And I think that if we can really, as a collective, women, people of color, LGBTQ plus IA, people with disability, it's like, you know what? I'm done with that. I'm done with that colonized mind. I'm done with how you say I'm supposed to be to keep this patriarchy and sort of capitalist machine up and going. I'm done with that. I'm done. That's revolution. And then when we get to do that, that's when, and you mentioned it, Bryce, liberation. That's what I want to see. I might be too old to march, but I want to see it. I want to see it. And that's when I think that we're going to make real progress, because then, it's like it's game over. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I might not have explained that well, but that's what
Oh
I
yeah, you did. Oh yeah, you did. I got you. I got you. Jana?
Yeah. Well, dag, Effie. You went in. It's funny because I was listening to you and thinking, if you don't have a mindset of power, then you really are crippled from the very beginning. You can't do anything that you set out to achieve, really, because ultimately, at some point, you're going to dive into a fear mindset, whatever that fear is. Fear I'm not good enough, fear I'm not white enough, fear I'm not black enough, fear I'm not strong enough, fear that I'm not, my voice won't be heard, whatever that fear is, in whatever capacity or dynamic you may exist inside of, at some point you hit that wall. And it does turn into hopelessness and despair and apathy and, all of the negatives that prevent us from really stepping into our greatness. And to me, that's where ultimately I think we all aspire to be. We aspire, I hope, to be in a mindset of abundance, a mindset of love. Um, and to me, and I don't want to wax spiritual because I can go there, but I think it's all ultimately into that space where we're all showing up on this planet to be the personification of whatever our spiritual practice is, and simply defined to be love. And that's loving ourselves and loving others, being part of a community, and being happy with that, and being grateful for that and sharing that. So, you can't do all those things when in your mind you're still telling yourself that it's a no. No, for whatever reason. So um I'm going to end on love. That's where we need to be, period.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited that you said all that. Yes. See, that's why I don't have to say nothing when any of y'all are around, because you say all the things. Thank you so much, y'all. I feel, yeah, that was great. I feel so thrown by your comments, Jana. Like, anybody talking about abundance and love, that's my jam. That's my jam. That's my jam.
Right there
Yes,
with you.
that's my jam. Well, thank y'all so much. I
Thank
hope
you.
it's not the last time that we are together. Maybe next time we can be in person. Maybe just in hazmat suits and hang out on the slopes or something. I don't know. But thank y'all for coming, and we'll be in touch. We'll be
You
in touch.
betcha.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
invitation, Anasa. This was really
Oh,
fun. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Great.
you. So
y'all
good
know
to
who I
connect.
am. Yes, always good to connect.
Good to see you.
Absolutely. All right.
I love that conversation so much. It's exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you again to Jana and Effie and Bryce for that conversation. I want to continue it a little bit later on Instagram Live. So once we finish talking to Emil, y'all meet us on Instagram, and some of the folks who just were in the panel will meet us there too. I want to pivot a little bit now because I want to talk a little bit more about what's happening for the big we, some exciting things that are happening over the last couple of years. We've all been experiencing the world change, and there's a few people in my life that have helped me change in this moment. And one of those people is writer, director, and founder of Amalite, Emil Nava. He is definitely one of those people. Emil is one of the world's most prolific and respected music video directors. He's been working in music videos and commercials for over a decade. And he's collaborated with some amazing people like Rihanna, Calvin Harris, Ed Sheeran, Dua Lipa, Post Malone, Eminem. The list is literally goes on for a mile. One of the things I love about Emil is that he really understands how to translate the vision of an artist to communicate with young people and with folks who are kind of just cutting into the conversation. And aggregated, Emil's work has literally dozens of billions of views. When I say prolific, I mean it. Emil launched his creative studio, Amalite Inc., in 2016, and he's done a really powerful job creating space for other directors, for young directors, female directors, and BIPOC directors. I'm actually really excited about this moment in his life as a creative because, like me, he's looking beyond how he can create space for others and really taking a chance on his own stories. He just finished his first feature length film, and it is breathtaking, a really elegant look at youth culture and addiction and love. I tears at the end. It's so beautiful. I can't wait for you to see it. Anyway, most importantly, Emil is my friend. He's a new friend of mine and a friend of the Big We. Welcome, Emil Nava. I'm so excited.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Good to see you.
I'm happy to see you too. How are you doing?
Can't believe we're video again. We got, we were close to in person, but it's
So
good to be
close.
here. It's good to be here.
So
It was
close.
amazing listening to that conversation.
So good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think that was why we first met was I was listening to a conversation with you then. I mean, it's so amazing to hear everyone's POVs and thoughts and just to think about all the amazing things we can do, because I think growing up we ultimately we get told we can't do things, so it's a great time.
Yeah, that's actually a really good place to start, Emil. Why don't you talk a little bit about how we met?
Yeah.
It's such a crazy story.
It is mad. I mean, I was looking back the other day because I found some videos on my phone, but I think, it was right when COVID hit. It was madness. My shoots were getting shut down left, right, and center. I mean, we pulled like 3 massive shoots. I was alone in the house. I wasn't alone. It was in the house. And I watched a conversation with you, I think. And I just remember thinking, wow, like the way you spoke and the way you spoke about everything, like, I always tell my friends, I always say Anasa is magical. You are a magical person. And I think, when I hear you talk about the world, your thoughts on the world and where we're going, and just listening to you talk, it felt so, I don't like personal. Like I don't know, there was something like I just felt like I was listening to you have a conversation. I wasn't kind of being spoke at. I don't know if I'm articulating it right. But anyway, I was like, I have to speak to Anasa. So I emailed someone who knew you and I was like, she's not going to want to speak to me. And then obviously, you wanted to speak to me, which is amazing. And I won't get too into it, but I think I was having my own struggles then, with who I was. My father's Mexican, my mother's English. I live in America. I'm from London. I was kind of like stuck here, not stuck here, but stuck in my house in another country. And as a creator, I was wondering, what am I making? And I just had so many questions. And I think that when we spoke, I'd made this film, which you touched on, which is it's a heavy movie about, and it's kind of looking at the drug problem in America and in the world through the lens of the youth. Personally, sober for 5 years, struggled a lot with addiction when I was a kid. So, was making this film where I wanted to kind of say all these things. I was questioning who I was as a person. I was in a pretty mad spot. And I think when we spoke, you were, a ray of light for me. And we had many more chats, which I think brought us here.
Yeah. I loved hearing you talk about that time because I remember when I first got word that you wanted to talk, and I was like, excited because I remember that interview that you listened to, and it was at really what felt like a turning point for humanity,
Mm.
right? And I was saying things publicly that I had never said before because I just was like, what's the sense of holding back at this point? Like, what's the sense of any of this, right? Just it's time just to tell the truth and to say all the things. And it felt like a really important check mark on like, oh, I did the right thing. Like there, there all that corny thing. Like if I change one person's mind in my life, right? Like the fact that you not only like heard it and it resonated with you, but it propelled you to want to have an actual conversation. Felt like an important moment in my own life, in my own development, and I just wanted to hear what was reacting, what was happening in your mind. And then it turned into something totally different because the things that you were saying about your own struggle and your own kind of massaging that you were doing, like wrestling with your creativity, wrestling with your identity, wrestling with your responsibility as a storyteller and an entrepreneur in the world that was changing, was just like, oh, this is my brother, yo. Like this guy, yes, I want to talk to him 100 times, 100 times. And the conversation, like, I think almost in the first conversation went to what can we do together? How do we kind of bring these threads together and figure out how to build and make things together? And you had some ideas that we ended up not doing, but I think they're worth I think they're worth listening to because I actually feel like that idea is going to come back around. But why don't you talk about kind of like what inspired you, what kind of ideas you were working on, and then we can talk about what we're actually going to do together.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just, you reminded me that also I think I set up, as you mentioned, I set up this creative studio, a few years ago, and have been really focused on new talent, new voices, female voices, just new voices, and I think that when the pandemic happened and there was all these conversations about kind of inclusion and our industry was changing.
Yeah.
And I guess, I felt frustrated at that time because I was like, I've been trying to push a lot of these changes myself and with the company, and I think that when the pandemic hit, there was all these conversations about it, and I think that our conversation felt the most impactful and like we really could do something about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went off topic there. Off the question. What was the question again? Sorry.
Just kind of the ideas that started to ruminate for you as we were
Okay.
talking. Yeah, you were
Yeah,
right on
no.
point. You're good.
Well, I think that the amazing thing is we just talked so much and we didn't really have a goal. It didn't seem like we had a goal, or we were just kind of like exploring each other,
Yeah.
I felt.
Yeah.
And a big feeling that I think the first conversation we had where we started really moving into what we could do together was I was definitely thinking about a new type of education in film and TV and how we can bring more people into the industry. Like I've grown up in this industry. I started in the industry when I was 17. So, almost 20 years ago. And, I definitely have seen it change a lot, but not not enough for me to, not enough for me. Like, I feel like more people need to be able to get into the industry. It's like, to me, it's like, it reminds me of when I couldn't get into a club. You'd be at the club, they tell you wearing the wrong shoes, wrong trousers. And I remember that feeling of not being able to get in. And I definitely feel from, especially what I see on social media, people DMing me, like, how do I get in? How do I get into the industry? I get asked all the time. So that was a big thing that we spoke about. But also, like, I never went to film school or I didn't study it, So I think the first conversations were about how can we open the doors to the industry, and also how can we teach young minds, about this industry that's maybe a slightly less traditional approach, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me actually a lot of the conversation we just had with Effie, Bryce, and Jana, really talking about, ownership and sovereignty and self-determination, and really thinking from my perspective as somebody who was thinking about the folks who don't get to be in those rooms, the folks who don't get to tell their stories, the folks who don't, even when you do get to tell your story, when you don't have control or ownership over it because it belongs to someone else. And really like think the thing I love about you, Emil, is that you are a rogue. You're like a rebel, but with no malice, right? You know how some people are like, oh, I'm gonna go against the system, and you're just like, I'm just gonna do it this way because this was natural for me, and I'm gonna do what I can to make sure other people can do it their way. And you're like the most lighthearted rebel I know, and I love that about you. And I felt really inspired by your vision to be able to crack open the door and say, actually, and I think the language that we started to use was like, how do we put the power of the green light in new people's hands, right? The work that I do with Kat Taylor, she always says, giving power to new and different people. And her voice was in my head when I was talking to you. And I just kept thinking, how can we put the power of the green light in new and different people's hands? And I felt so inspired by that conversation, which is why, you know, in addition to just loving talking to you and having a good time when we talk, I felt inspired by that notion, by that idea. And I'm excited that we actually have figured out, you know, how to be able to at least start that conversation.
No, definitely. I love that. You know what you're saying about being a rebel, because I don't know. You know, I guess I am a rebel. I've always been a bit of a rebel, but I think I'm also. I always would joke that my mind had been a little untouched, maybe in terms of education of the industry and the film industry and how you make a film, because I never studied it. So I guess I'm just trying to ask the questions all the time, like why is it like this? And you know, one answer I sometimes get is that, you know, well, that's just how it is. And I'm like, well, if that's just how it is, then that's always that's always how it's going to be, unless, you know, we can change it. And I think Effie was saying so many of those points about ownership and about green light. And you know, I think that that's where I like to think we're going. You know, I keep joking that like I want us to have this massive green button.
Boom!
Go
May
make
it be
it.
so. May it be so.
But yeah, I think that like, and if he touched on so much of it, but I think being able to be like I feel that the best things I've ever watched and consumed feel like they were made without fear. I mean, I'm sure there was fear, and I'm sure, you know, obviously we're all scared when we try and make stuff, but there's something about, I don't know, bringing back that fearless creative and giving new creatives like the ability to be fearless.
Yes.
And I think that, yeah, having that green light and power between us, but then also giving it to other people and
That's
seeing,
right.
you know, yeah, just us to be able to create with more freedom a bit, you know?
Yeah. The thing that is exciting to me about what we're doing together is not just like the power, but it's also building a community of people who can have power together, building a community of people who are like, here are the things that we need. Here are the stories that we want. Here are the ways we want these stories to show up in the world. Because the other thing that happens when you're isolated and marginalized is you feel alone. And that is even more disempowering than the original, right? Disempowering. You're just like, God, I'm just out here by myself. And thinking about building a community of creatives who also have access to capital, the power of the green light, access to be able to share their creations directly to folks, right? Without having to go through all the things that we all have to go through, is really exciting. And I feel like now we're just drawing it out. So why don't you talk about what we're doing? What are we doing?
I know, I thought we're alluding to,
We're being very mysterious, right?
Yeah.
We're giving a little shoulder and taking it back. Just rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm excited to say, you know, Nell is what we've been working on. It's an amazing thing. You know, I think to me, I see it as a physical, you know, object of positivity and light and love. And, you know, I think what Janice said as well about, you know, leading with positivity and leading with love, I think that's what we want to create. And ultimately we want to create a modern day studio where we're kind of, you know, financing our own projects, film, TV, documentary, short form, where we're creating new ways of ownership, where, creators can earn off streaming and earn off views, and really building to this point of distribution, how this stuff goes out. But yeah, it's called Nell. We are very excited. First time to say it, in public.
Right, in public.
in public, yeah. I'm gonna go out down the pub and start shouting about it. But I and how you introduce it as well, and also
Yeah. Nell is one of my favorite things right now because it's really the dream. It's like the space. We talk about building spaces and communities, but Nell is our space in the world to tell the stories that we want to tell, to bring forth the voices that we know are important to shape the future, to shape the narrative, to the folks whose imagination I want to live into, right? Bringing those folks forward. And, by the way, to your point and Janet's point, Nell, NEL, stands for Never Ending Love. And that, to me, when we got to that, and I was like, yes, that's what we're doing. We're creating a space where we're creating love all the time through all the stories that we want to tell, and sharing love with the folks who are going to be our storytelling heroes, and being able for that to go out into the world, because that's our role as artists, is to be able to shape the imagination of the public and to make new things possible, and to make, for me, the thing that I want to see possible in the world is love. So to me, this is like a dream come true. And I'm so happy we're doing it with you, Emil, because, I need a little rebel in my life.
Thank you. Well, I think we touched on it earlier on, but I think another reason we've been so amazing in the way we work together is I think that the idea of where the content, where the visuals can go,
yes,
in conversation, after. So I think what we want to do with now, and what we've been talking about, is that not only do we want to give the power to the new voices, we want to be able to let these creators create, but we also want to be able to, I think with my film anyway, at the moment, I'm saying a lot of things that I believe within the film.
yes,
you said something amazing to me, which was, how do you keep saying those things? How
yes,
do those conversations keep happening?
yes.
And I think that, the idea that we can have a platform, a space, now where people can do that, but we can also talk about how to, move that conversation on.
Yeah.
I think, there's just so many things that excite me about it. I could
Yeah.
talk about it for a long time.
The conversation about embodiment, and we can wrap up, but the conversation about embodiment is the most important thing to me, because our stories need to live in real life. Like the things that you are saying in snorkeling, I want for people to hear that message and learn how to actually live it in their everyday life. If it ends at at the credits, then it didn't do what it didn't give what it was supposed to have gave. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so much life in these stories, and that life needs to live in our bodies and in our communities and in our homes. And that, to me, is like building that intentionally. I'm so excited.
Me too.
Thank you for
I just want to say thank you for being my friend, being my partner, collaborator, my magical being of light. I love
being
it.
my rebel.
I just want to say thanks to the Macro Lounge for having us on, and all the sponsors. Just want to say a big thank you, big shout out. Thank you, Sundance.
Yes. I'm going to bring Tanum back. But before I do, thank you, Emil, so very much for being here today. Thank you to our team, to Tanum and to Laura. Again, thank you to Stacy and the Macro team and everyone at Sundance and our sponsors. Back to you, Tanum.
Oh my God, Anasa, that was so amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. I'm so excited that the world now knows what we've been cooking up for the past 18 months. You know me, I'm always a student of notes. So the three things I'm taking away from your conversation is: one, I'm going to move with the power mindset.
Yes.
Two, I am here to be loved. And you say that all the time. And I truly believe that as well. And I love that. And then really leaning into Effie's point about, like, what can I do to dismantle the colonialist mindset so that I can be fearless?
So
Yes.
I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive on that one because that really kind of sparked my information.
I feel like we need to have a prayer circle about that one because that, I mean, that's where it's at. That one, that's where it's at. Yeah, we might have to show up in the Weverse with that conversation because everybody needs to be in that. Yeah, that was great. It was great.
Yeah, but thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. So to close us out, I just want to say it's been really, really wonderful to be here at the Macro Lodge in 2022. Little fun fact, Anasa and I met at the Macro Lodge in 2020 at the Sundance Film Festival. So this community is so near and dear to me personally, but it also is what started this whole thing that you just kind of got a taste of. I want to do a really, really big thank you to Anasa and all of our panelists for such an engaging conversation. For more information about the Big We, please visit us at www.thebigwe.com. You can also reach out to me directly if you want to have a conversation to schedule a follow-up at Tanum@thebigwe.com. Please join us right after this conversation for a live IG on our Instagram feed at The Big We. And of course, a special thank you to you, the audience, for your participation. Could not have done this without you being here. I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of our audience and have a great virtual Sundance.